Hi, this is part 2, customizing the happy face, and so we're going to add a whole pile of new tricks to it and learn a pile of new toys and new tools for it as well. So here it goes. First thing I'd like to teach you is how to use gradients. Gradients can be used to make something look a little bit more 3D, and I'm going to start with the face for this one. Gradient is a transition from one color to the next. Right now we have a color of yellow going to a color of white. That's just where we sort of left off. But I'm going to do something a little different. I'd like to have it go from yellow to a darker color of yellow. So I'm going to click on the background swatch, and I'm going to sample the yellow color that we have right there right now. So just clicking on what we have. I could also have clicked on the foreground color and duplicated it. And to make a darker value of that same color, I'm just going to drag this down to a darker tone of it. Now I have yellow to sort of a mustard color. And to use a gradient to make this more interesting, the gradient tool might be under the paint bucket. I'll take it back to being a gradient tool. And the default for this is to use foreground to background gradient transition. Okay, so there's going to be a blend from one to the other. And if you went in there and dragged a line, it's going to paint that gradient from the foreground to the background. Now, we've just wiped out our circle, but there's a trick to that too. I'll undo, Control Z. I'm going to lock the opacity or the transparency of just that face layer, and making sure I'm painting on the face layer. When I paint from now on, it will only paint, oh dear, it'll only paint where there's already been some painting that's taken place, some solid opaque pixels. So there's one variation on this happy face. I could just have a linear gradient going from light to dark. That works just fine. There's another variation up here that's even more interesting for this though, and it's called a radial gradient. And it basically lets you click a point, drag outward from it, and it will radiate the color from foreground to background, sort of radiating out from that highlight point. So using that, I can come up with something that looks a little bit more 3D, a little more sculpted than that linear. I'm going to keep on going from here. I'm going to use this some other little techniques on the eye and the face. Next trick I'm going to show you is called layer styles. Layer styles can be accessed from this little FX panel if you have one in the layers panel. But I'm going to get to it under the drop down, under layer, layer style. And for this one, I'm picking on the eyes right now. I'm going to use Bevel and Emboss. And Bevel and Emboss will allow me to make these eyes sort of pop out and look more 3D. It highlights a top and it darkens the bottom. You have to play around with these settings a little bit to get exactly what you want. Leave it as an inner bevel and leave it as smooth, but the depth, I think if it started kind of mild, I usually crank it up so it's a little more pronounced. I've scaled up the size maybe a little bit. If you go too far, it's a little ridiculous. Okay, but you can play around with it if you like, depending on how you want it to look. And softening it is a good idea too. I've also darkened it up. The opacity can be very faint, especially against black, but I'm going to take it up to about an 86%. And that gives me sort of a nice 3D look to those eyes. The face, I can also apply an interesting layer style to. If I go layer and layer style, I'm going to try using a drop shadow on the face itself. And you get the idea what a drop shadow does. Makes it pop off the screen a little bit for you. Again, you've got to play around with the settings. Typically what I do is I take it and have it sort of offset. I want to sort of echo what I did with the radial gradient. And I'll play around with the distance a little bit, the size, the spread, all of that, till I get something that looks fairly decent. So there's our customized new version of the happy face. Now, not a bad idea to save this at this point in time. So File, I'm going to go Save. And I'm going to save it wherever it is that I want to put the thing. Last name, first initial, happy face, emoji. You know what? Saving is a really smart idea on a regular basis. Now we're going to go to more customization. It's going to try to make this look a little more customized and personable. So I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to try to put some elements in there that will make it look a little bit more like it's supposed to be a caricature of me. You do you. I'm doing me. I'm going to start with eyebrows. And this will show you another technique using the pencil tool and how useful that is. So in the eyebrows layer, I'm going to go find my pencil tool. It's hidden under the tool brush, shares the same tool brush spot. Sorry about that. I keep messing that up. I got a fancy mouse. To draw eyebrows, rather than just drawing goofy eyebrows like that, undo, I'm going to draw them looking a little more illustrated. And first of all, I'm going to hit that little default swatch to take me back to black and white. And to draw the eyebrows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click 4 points to define the outline of it. And in between, I'm going to hold Shift. First click, no shift, just clicking a point. Next, hold Shift and click the next point, and you get a straight line using the pencil tool. And then I'm going to go up, holding shift, and back, holding shift, and then close it off, holding shift. And I'll try to do the same thing over here. Letting go of shift, clicking the first point. Well, it kind of went way over to that grid line. It snapped to the grid line. If you have a bother with that, you can turn off snap to grid lines. Maybe I'll do that. View, snap to, turn off the grid. Okay, holding shift, click the second point, third point, and I'm pretty relaxed with how these eyebrows are looking. You could make them look better, but that's going to do me for now. And now that I've defined it, I can fill it in. I've got that black color. I'm going to go back to where the gradient is and change it back to a paint bucket. There it is. And being careful where the cursor lands, that'll fill that in. Gives me my eyebrows. Next layer, I'm going to make some glasses. Eyeglasses. I'm going to use a rectangular marquee tool. I'm going faster with this. Rectangular marquee tool is under the ellipse. I'm going to draw something that looks like sort of the rough shape of glasses, but I wanted to kind of curve it a little bit. I don't want it to be a perfect rectangle, so I'm going to take the selection. Under this select menu, all sorts of good tricks. Modify, smooth is the one I'm going for. And it lets you punch in a value. I've punched in 10, say OK, and it's actually smoothed the corner, so it's round cornered rectangle, I guess you'd call it. And now I want to trace that with that same black color that I had there. And to trace it, I'm going to go up to Edit, Stroke. A stroke will put this, will actually just trace around the selected area on the glasses layer with whatever width I want. In this case, it's going to be 6 pixels. Done. While I have this sort of inside there too, I'm going to play around now with, no, maybe I won't. I was going to put a lens in there, but I think I'm going to wait and put that on its own layer. I'll do that next. But first I got to duplicate that. Control D to deselect. To duplicate this, let's go back to what we did before. Control J. I got a glasses copy now. And now when I move this, I have to be careful that I am clicking on the opaque pixels. Maybe it should be there. Click and drag. Good, I did it. If you miss, you might wind up pulling your happy face, the yellow part, out of place. Okay, glasses are coming together. I would like to merge the two of them together. I mentioned before that I'd merge the eyes together. Here's how I did that. A right mouse click on the upper layer, and you want to look for something called Merge Down. And it's way down here, and unfortunately it's right off your screen, but trust me, it's there. Merge Down will merge those two things together. Now, while I have the pencil tool still around here, I'm going to join the bridge of the two glasses together. Here's the trick to that. Hold Shift when you drag across, and if it's a new build, it should not join it with anything else, and it will let you draw a perfectly straight line by holding Shift. In fact, I'm going to put a couple there. Now, if you held Shift and did this, you might get a diagonal as it joins one point with the other. Undo. And the trick to that is click once to let go, click and hold Shift to draw it. Whoops. If you have to try it a couple of different times, that's okay. And you get more or less what you want. Good. Glasses layer is done. I'm going to put some lenses underneath the glasses. Here's the trick to that. I want to select the area inside the glasses, so I'm going to go back to the glasses layer here. And I'm going to go look for a tool up here called the Magic Wand tool. Very useful. Clicking it, it's kind of important that it is not using sample all layers for this. We just want it to look in the current layer, glasses, and contiguous is good. I'm going to click inside the glasses area and it selects where the lens should be. Holding Shift down, I can go to the other area, because again I'm still in the glasses area, and it's highlighted the areas inside the glasses where the lenses should be. And now I'll go over to this layer. I can name it now and I'll call it Lenses. And to put in a color there that will work, I'm going to flip the black and the white. I'm going to make hit the flip-flop button here, put white in place. And here's one thing I could do. I'll go back to Gradient. And I've got it going from white to black now. And I could fill this in like this. And you could get some kind of cool shades. Well, it's still using Radial. And it's only putting a highlight on one place. Well, that's interesting though. Undo. I can do better. I'm going to go to Linear. Try it with Linear now. Do that. Oh yeah, both of them. Nice. undo. I can do better than that. I'm going to make it look a little bit more believable. I'm going to toggle the way that the gradient works. Instead of it being foreground to background, I'm going to go foreground to transparent by choosing this option. And now if I paint it, it's going to give me just sort of a highlight like this. But wait, I can do even better than that. Undo. I'm going to go to this option over here, and this one is actually called Reflected Gradient. And now using that one, if I sort of start about a third of the way down and click down to the bottom, it gives me something that looks like a reflection that's in there. That's the one I'm going for. And I'm going to deselect at this point in time. But still, while I'm on the lenses layer, it's a little severe right now. So I'm going to choose the lenses layer and look at the top of the layer palette. You have something called opacity. That's how solid or transparent it is. If I brought that down a little bit, I can make it look more like it's just a light little glare rather than obscuring everything. That's what I'm doing for the glasses. All right, we're getting there. Next big trick, time to put the hair in place. Once you get some hair in there, things look even more believable. So I'm going to need to make myself a hair layer. Now, you might try this, but obviously you got to customize your hair the way your hair works. And all I can show you is the way mine's working right now. I'm going to use an elliptical marquee. I'm going to do a very stylized version of this. And I would like this to start just outside the happy face. So I'm going to go up from the first 50 pixel point. I'm going to go inside there a little bit, something like that, and find the corresponding place down here. I'm not being too precise, but to make it more of a perfect circle, I'll hold Shift and just sort of eyeball it there to try to get something that looks good. Now, here's the way I've put together a stylized version of hair. I am going to go look for my hair color by going to the color picker, trying to find something sort of a dark orange will give me sort of a brown. Okay, that'll be my brown hair. And I'm going to fill this in. And I guess I'm just going to do that with, I'm going to use Alt-Delete to fill that in. We did that once before. Alt-Delete works okay. But what I want to do is I want to have sort of a gradient going in there with the hair down the road too. So I'm going to find a background color by clicking on this and then clicking on that same brown. I'm going to find that same brown but more of sort of a silver version of it, sort of faded out in white like that. And I think what I'm going to do, I'll try using a gradient like this, linear, and try going from top to bottom. At least I'll try. Oh, I got to get the right gradient up there. There it is. Top to bottom. Okay, so now I'm going from brown to sort of gray down at the bottom. That's what I'm shooting for. Now to cut out the middle part of it, I want to have the face show through and have the hair sort of around the outside edge. I'm going to use another option under Select, Modify. I'm going to use this thing called Contract or Contract. And I'm going to pick, in this case, 40 pixels and say OK. And that shrinks the selected area. Now you might notice it's a little pointy at north, south, east, and west. So I'm going to go back to that smooth option that I think we used once before. I'll put in the full 40 pixels, and that should round it out a little bit better. And now if I hit the delete key, I'll see how much of this stuff is showing through. Okay, there's my face sort of showing through. I think I need more of my face showing through for this, so I'm going to expand it now. Select, Modify, Expand. I'll take it up, maybe I'll take it up 15 pixels, so it's a little bit bigger. I'll use the same smooth. Modify, Smooth. 40 pixels is good. Hit delete again. Yeah, that's a little bit more of what I was shooting for. And this is just sort of a stylized thing I've been playing around with. The hair looks pretty good and starts to look stylized if I put a little toupee on top of it. That'll be another oval. I'll try a new trick with this though. I want the oval to be centered around the center line here. So I'm going to go close to the grid. Oops, I better turn the grid back on though. Snap to. Grid is on. I'm going to click right about here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key before I start dragging the ellipse, and it will build out from the center. And what I want to have is sort of a little toupee-ish looking chunk of hair at the top. Something like this. It's going to cover over my eyebrow. And I'm going to use that same gradient tool to fill it in. On its own layer. There. That does the job. Now this is supposed to represent my beard. If you don't have a beard, you might want to delete some of that. You could delete it by going to the rectangle tool and just highlighting the lower chunk of it or something, going to the hair layer and hitting delete. Yeah, that's not a handsome haircut, but you get the idea. But I'm going to keep mine because mine's going to be a beard. I'm just going to add a mustache to it. Here's the way I would do that. I'm going to add another layer. Get the idea that layers are kind of important here, eh? There's a beard layer that's going on. I'm going to try that trick again, holding Alt, dragging out. Oops, I've got the wrong shape. Back to an elliptical marquee. I want this beard and mustache to sort of center around where the mouth is at. So I'll click like this. That might do the job. Kind of in there like this. I'll give this a try and see if this works. I'm on the right layer, gradient, and pull down the gradient like this. And now I want to get rid of the section in the center. So I'll do the same thing here again, and I'm going to try to, whoops, let's drag out a hole in there. I want to kind of style it. I want to be sort of wider on the outside edge. I kind of want to match where this thing would be. Nuts. If I hit delete, how's that looking? Kinda does the job. But if you don't like it, undo it, try it again. Control D. More like that. A little bit wider to get more of the mouth. So I'm just about there. I've got most of the features that I want into it. The last thing that you can try playing around with, though, is you get these little bits and pieces all put together. You can try messing around with joining some things. You know, for instance, the beard and the hair for me. I think I might want to merge those things down. I'm going to do that. Once they're merged down, you can play other tricks like locking the transparency. And I could try reapplying that gradient one more time so it's more consistent. And remember those things with layer styles. You can have some fun with that too. I'm going to play with that a little bit and see if I dress up the face with a little bit of a layer style, a little beveled edge. I'm on the hair layer right now. Okay, layer style, bevel and emboss, and it'll remember what settings you used the last time. I used this for the glass or for the eyes. It's a little bit too much, so I'm going to dial some of this down a chunk. You know, soften it a little bit less, make the size a little bit less pronounced. You know, the depth doesn't have to be quite so severe. So it just gives it a little bit of a 3D feel. Once you get something that you kind of like, you can copy that by right mouse clicking on the layer. Look for copy the layer style. So I'm going to apply that to the toupee as well. Paste it on up there. And there, I'm kind of getting the job done. It's giving me this sort of reaction that I wanted. I'm going to go back, maybe play around with the glasses, you know, maybe even paste the layer style there and try to give it a little bit of a 3D, but there's my icon. I'm going to file and save before you forget the work, and then to export the work, file, export, and export as, and I would suggest in this particular case, a good option is a PNG file. I'm going to show you one more trick that you can do. Holy smokes, this is a long video. Way longer than I planned. At this point in time, I could export it as a PNG. You can make it a smaller file because it doesn't have that many colors, so taking it down to 8 bits will save you a lot of file space. And then hit export all. But after you've saved it, I'll tell you what, I'm going to export it. And I'll call this, Happy Face Emoji PNG. The last little variation that you can try doing once you get all these things in place is, if I wanted to try to make this thing into more of a logo, there's some interesting things that you could do. If I turn off an eyeball, I can hide any layer. Well, that's an interesting look. But the opposite is true if you hold down Alt and click on this. It hides everything but the current layer. And that's kind of looking a little bit logo-like. And if I wanted to make a logo for myself that looked kind of, I don't know, identifiable maybe I would put the glasses on there, put the hairline around the outside, and that could be saved and exported as a separate PNG. So I might go File, Export, and Export as. This time using a slightly different name for it. Same settings, but in this case it's not Happy Face Emoji. This one might be Happy Face Logo. And save that. So get the idea of the fun that can be had with this and the power that you get out of these layers. So this has been a 2-part introduction on all of these tricks. I'm going to turn all these layers back on. But ladies and gentlemen, try it for yourselves. I hope that you can pick all this stuff up. I've tried to give you a full tour, but it's up to you what you can do with it. Good luck, and we'll see you in the next video.